Hello, I'm Martin Fencka and welcome to the first episode of Let's Try Iratus Lord of the Dead. So Iratus Lord of the Dead is a roguelike dungeon crawler that's currently in early access, but well, that's a description that doesn't tell us that much, so it might be better to say that Iratus is a game you'd get if Darkest Dungeon and Slay the Spire had a baby and the baby turned evil. Because in this game, as you might have guessed already, we'll be playing for the evil side as a necromancer. What I should also say is that it's just the first episode of a new series, and this is the first time I'm recording from this game, so at least in this episode we will go through all the settings, we'll explain all the basic mechanics, so if you already have some experience with the game, this first episode there probably won't be that much for you. As I said, we'll be going through all the basics. I still want to do at least one fight to show all the mechanics in action, but probably at least the first part will be something you may want to skip. But for those of you who don't know the game yet, I should probably go through everything, because even though you will find there is, as I said, a lot of similarities with Darkest Dungeon and Slay the Spire, the game is surprisingly complex and difficult. Like, it surprised me the first time I tried it how difficult it actually is. So let's jump into the game and we'll go through all the basics and all the mechanics together. Now let's start a new game here. There actually isn't that many settings. I think this is just one screen where you basically choose the difficulty. There's either tutorial where the game explains the basic. Then we have the easiest difficulty, Cakewalk. If you want to read what that exactly means, you can read it in the description. Then we have More Pain as medium difficulty. Again, if you want to read the exact settings, you can just pause the video. And then we have Good Always Wins as the most difficult settings, but as you can read in the description, we first have to finish the game on the medium difficulty to even unlock the hardest difficulty. And as you can see, I haven't finished the medium difficulty yet, so I don't have access to this. And honestly, after trying More Pain, I really can't imagine how difficult this one has to be, because, well, it was quite a challenge for me, even on the medium difficulty, but you'll see when we enter the game. Okay, so we'll go with More Pain. Now we just quickly load the game, and here we are. So this is us, Iratus. This is like our study, let's say. But maybe let's jump out of the study first and we'll check our base. So here's our base, actually Chamber of Iratus. It's not a study, it's called Chamber of Iratus. That's where we are working from. So this is like the center of our base, and there are some buildings around: library, obelisk, abode of wrath, dried lake. As you can see, most of them, except mortuary, most of these buildings are currently in pretty bad shape. Actually, they don't work at all, so we first have to rebuild them to make them work. They do things like replenish mana, heal our minions, give extra experience, allow us to get extra materials, all the usual things you'd expect from like buildings in your base. To build these, or to rebuild, I should say, these buildings, we need something called Architect Souls that we find after, or that we can find after, or loot after each fight. And then we also need to always sacrifice a specific type of minion. For example, if we want to build excavation, we have to sacrifice a skeleton and use 20 architect souls. Each building has 4 levels. We can maybe check it here. So we already have the first level of mortuary unlocked as the only building that actually works. If we want to unlock level 2, we would have to sacrifice, this is I think a shade, and to upgrade the building, it costs double of the previous investment. So to get it to level 2, it would cost us 40 architect souls. Then, when we jump into the chamber, here, where do we start? First, let's not just start from this side and we'll go through all the options that we have here. So, talents. Iratus himself has certain talents, divided into 4 categories: alchemy, magic, iron, and destruction. From the names, it's quite clear what it does. Here we are getting some extra like materials. This is like the category that you want to take if you want to play for like the strategist, like the general that gets large armies. So you get a lot of materials, you get some extra materials that allows you to upgrade your minions to higher levels, all the kind of stuff. Magic, pretty self-explanatory if you want to play for mage. Ire, well, to me, Ire feels like something in between magic and distraction. I don't really have too much experience with it. And, well, when we get some... Actually, we already have one talent point that we can invest, but... As we get more and we think about how to progress through the game, we'll just check all the options. It's quite a few, as you can see. I don't think there is any point to like read every single ability. It's too early for that. Later, when we know the game a little bit better, we can read through all of it. And then we have Destruction, which is like... the direct damage magic, the like the battle mage kind of stuff, where you are doing damage directly to your opponents. This is more like a support mage here, the magic skill tree. Also, I didn't play with this part too much. My favorite so far was probably Destruction and Alchemy. Then you can see that each of these like skill trees, let's say it this way, is divided into 4 tiers. If you want to unlock an ability in the first tier, you need 1 talent point, and as you go lower, you need more and more. So for the second tier, you need 2 points for each ability, 3 points and 4 points. So it's getting more and more expensive if you want to go down the skill trees. That's one thing. That's the like levels or leveling of the necromancer himself. Then we have let's actually go to creation. This is where we create our minions. So here you can see we have different types of minions. Each has a like a description, and each of our minions has a set of abilities. So you can see 2, 4, 5 basic abilities, and then the last one is like an ultimate ability that we have to like get. I'm not sure how it's called exactly, but it's like a rage. So when you are dealing damage and taking damage, a bar is going up, and when you reach certain level, that allows you to use the special ability. As you can see, for example, for this one, it costs 60. It's not rage, but I don't remember how the energy is called exactly. So let's call it rage for now. So we need to get to 60 to activate the ultimate ability. Also, as you can see, some of these minions are still locked, and we have to unlock them by fulfilling specific like tasks, and this progress is kept in between different like attempts. So I still need, for example, to trigger insanity in 28 more enemies to unlock the shade. I need to turn 3 enemies into vampires to unlock vampire. When you start the game for the first time, you only have these 6 unlocked, and all under that is locked. So I unlocked these 4 on top of the basics that I already had right from the start. Here each minion has a certain stats. We will get that in a second. And to create a minion, you need to use crafting materials. As you can see, we have, actually the materials are up here. So we have armor, dust, blood, bones, hearts, rags, skulls, weapons, flesh, and ectoplasm. Items that our minions can use. And there are items that minions can use, and then there are different items that the necromancer himself can use. We'll get to that in a second as well. So here are the specific materials that we need to raise the specific minion. For example, this would be skeleton, so we need bones, skull, armor, and weapons to do that. If you wanted a zombie, you can see there is a different set. So you have to keep an eye on the materials that you have available. What else? We went through the crafting materials. We have the abilities. I won't go through abilities of every single minion. We'll just create like a group of minions that we'll be using for this series, and we will learn how they work. and then maybe if we have enough materials, we'll create a group that is focused differently, and we'll learn how they work. There's actually a lot to process right from the start, and it took me a while to figure out how the minions work, or which minions work well together. So it would be a bit overwhelming just going through the abilities. I don't think that anyone would remember all the abilities anyway. One important thing that I should say is that our minions can also get levels, and as they get levels, their abilities can be improved. You can always choose like which ability you want to improve, and then which way. You have one option on the left and one option on the right. Also, when you upgrade an ability, your base stats, depends on which upgrade you choose, one of the base stats increases. So for example, if I decided to improve buckshot, I have an option to go for plentiful buckshot or go for whistling buckshot. And if I went for the plentiful one, my resistance would go up. If I decided to take the whistling buckshot, my vigor would go up. That's like hit points. So there's actually a lot of planning when it comes to leveling your minions. For example, in case of a zombie, you can use zombies as pure tanks. In that case, you want to get as much defensive stats as possible, or you can use them like an artillery, and then you would want to get like all the offensive stats that you can find. And it's the same with each minion, so there really is quite a lot you have to consider when you are like training your minions. Now, we got to the stats that minions have, so those are here. So each minion has attack, which is normal physical attack that's doing damage to hit points. Then we have dread, which is similar to attack, except same as in Darkest Dungeon. There is something like sanity in the game, except it's not us who has sanity. We can't go insane, right? It doesn't make sense as for undead to go insane, but the good guys, they'll be against us, they have sanity. So instead of focusing on their hit points, we can make them insane, and eventually they will get a heart attack. So we have to choose if we focus on their hit points or if we focus on their sanity, and that's what these two stats represent, how much damage we can do to those stats. Then we have accuracy. You can also just read the description, because I think there is a pop-up like this for everything that you mouse over, so the game actually tells you quite a lot. So likelihood of hitting the target. Then we have evasion, so likelihood of evading an attack. Luck as a chance of landing a crit. Vigor, basically hit points. Then we have armor. Actually, armor, well, you can read the description. It reduces physical damage. Then we have resistance, which reduces magical damage, which is different from block and ward, which mitigates physical or magical attacks. That means it completely negates the attack, but you then lost either block or ward. So you have certain amount of stacks. For example, if you start with 2 stacks of blocks, you can completely mitigate first 2 attacks, but then the block disappears. And then the last stat is initiative. Pretty simple. The faster you are, the earlier you go during each round. So that's the description of our minions. And what else? Next, let's go to artifacts. This is pretty simple. This is a gear our necromancer can use. There really isn't that much. We have 5 slots. With the difficulty settings that we are using, we are starting with 2 items. So let's read through it. It's generated randomly. All minions gain 10 accuracy and 10% damage. This is pretty good until the end of the battle. And this effect is removed when a minion takes damage. I mean, sure. I'll still take it. At least for a few turns, we will have the buffs, that's for sure. And then the Amulet of Perfection. Minions made up of 4 uncommon parts or more gain additional 20 vigor during battle. That's actually interesting. We will get to what uncommon parts means in a second. So we can equip that. I think right from the start it won't do anything, but as we progress through the game, this actually become pretty valuable. Okay, now the uncommon parts. For that, we have to check alchemy. Here, we can do some crafting with these parts that we'll be using to make our minions. First, transmutation, we take 2 parts and transmute them into a different type. This is not done randomly, so for example, if we used, or if we wanted to get armor, we would have to use 2 weapons. If we wanted to get, I don't know, ectoplasm, we would have to use 2 hearts. So this is pretty limiting actually, and sometimes it's quite difficult to get what you need. Sometimes it's even impossible, but well, there is the option to transmute, like limited, but it's there. Then we have extraction. Actually, I never used this one, so I may even have to read it. Converts 2 parts of the same type and rarity to new items. Oh, that's like transmutation, except for items. Those are the items that our minions can use. So there are these types of items. You can read their description. They each have some like specific bonus they give to your minions, and when you don't need specific type, you want something else, you can transmute it here and hope to get something better. So very similar to transmutation, except for different types of like items. And then we have distillation, and that allows us to improve the quality of materials. So this are our crafting materials of common quality. When we grab, for example, 2 armors, we can actually show it. Just, I think we will have enough for everything that we need to do. So we fill up these 2 slots, then we hit craft, and
skeleton will clean up this mess later.
It gives us uncommon version of armor. In this case, as you can see, the normal one doesn't have any bonuses. The uncommon one gives +1 dread to a minion that's like summon when we use this material. So of course, as you progress through the game, you want to make your minions from better version of crafting materials to give them extra stats. We can always take 2 uncommon materials of the same type and again use the distillation process to get a rare version, and then we can use the rare versions to even get legendary version. I've never gotten a legendary version yet, but I guess they'll be pretty powerful. I've seen some rare ones and those look pretty good. So there is even more that you have to consider when you are making your minions. There is the option when we check talents in alchemy to learn transplantation, and that allows you to replace parts. So for example, when you craft a skeleton and use a normal skull and later get, for example, a rare one, you can just put it in here and it replaces it in the skeleton, and you don't have to like craft a new one. So the skeleton already got some experience, just gets upgraded, and it's a pretty damn useful skill that I learned basically every single time I tried the game. So, I think that's all the basics covered, explained. There is 2 more things that I didn't cover, to dungeon and then humanarium, whatever. This is just like an encyclopedia of enemies that you encounter during the game. There is quite a lot, as you can see, and I haven't met that many. Or actually, when you meet a new enemy, you have to get a token that like adds the enemy into this catalog, and I didn't get all the tokens yet, so I actually met more enemies than I have in the humanitarium, but I definitely didn't meet all the enemies that are in the game. So that's that, and then to the dungeon. This is where the Slay the Spire part begins. Oh, you cannot move forward without minions. Okay, never mind, so we'll get to that in a second. Let's just make some minions. Where do we start with this? Now we have to decide how we want to focus the group. I think for the first series, actually no, I want to say we'll go with the basics, just focus on killing everyone, focusing on hit points, but let's actually do what I consider like the more entertaining part. Let's run everyone insane and make them get a heart attack. So for that, we definitely want the Banshee. For the first group, we'll be using, actually I can just autofill it. You will use the basic materials because I'm not sure if I crafted some uncommon ones, if you would have enough. We have to craft quite a lot of stuff. So Banshee. I hope I remember the composition. Then we want a tank that's gonna be a Dark Knight.
Everyone needs its
That's gonna be standing in front. Then we need... Oh man. Then we need the mummy, I think. Because the composition when you want to focus on sanity is completely different compared to what you need when you want to focus on hit points. I think Lost Soul, that's the last one that we need. Let me check abilities. Yeah, that's the healer for the party. So fill this one up and craft. There we go. So here's our composition. And before we leave, let's build some buildings as well. We'll be using mana, but we don't need that right away. Maybe I'll just start in the library so we get more experience for the necromancer right from the start. Let's see if we can get another Dark Knight. Actually, wait, there's one more thing that's maybe even more important. Excavation. We want to get materials. That's maybe more important. We'll get the library second. Let's get a skeleton.
Bones. Just so uninspired, you know.
Then we have to throw in the skeleton and basically sacrifice him to get the building. Here it is. Now there is a slot available where we can craft. And we have to work the slot, so we have to craft like summon another minion that will actually work it. And for that, what do we want to get? I think I'll get another Banshee. If this one gets like hurt during fights, then we can replace it. I will try to create a reserve team that we have a replacement for each minion. But I don't think we have materials for that right now, and we don't really need it right now. Okay, so fill it up.
Useful if you can put up with their
back to the graveyard. We'll be working the excavation. So after each fight, we'll get extra parts. Those are these materials. It's pretty important to get them so that you can replace your minions when you lose them. It's quite common, let's say, that you lose a minion. If you were following my series for some time, that you know that I'm trying to focus on not losing my units or minions, but in this game, in every run I have done so far, I've lost minions, so you have to expect that you're gonna lose minions, and you definitely want to make sure you have enough materials available at any point. Okay, and another thing, you need minions to upgrade all the buildings. You want to keep building up your base, so definitely materials are something you need to have available in or as much as possible. Okay, another thing that we can do is pick up a talent, and what I want here, I think it's magic. Here, we want to go sorrow. We'll be focusing on reducing sanity, so we want to be able to do some direct damage as a spell, so I'll pick up sorrow. I think we go sorrow with the next skill. We go amateur, or maybe we can start with amateur surgeon to get even more parts. As I said, those are pretty important. I think for the first fight we won't need spells. Let's actually start with the amateur surgeon. Then maybe we could try to be greedy, go transmutation, and the third skill is gonna be sorrow, but we'll see about that. Okay, so that's that, and now I think we can finally jump the dungeon. If you want to read the description or the part of the story here, please pause the video, but I won't focus on the story that much. I'll leave that to the full version of the game, and we can focus on the story a little bit more. Okay, and I guess if you know Slay the Spire, you'll recognize this map. Exactly the same as in Slay the Spire. You have to choose your path. On the path there are difficult rewards and obstacles, and in the end all the parts meet up in the final encounter with the boss, and then you progress to the next stage of the game. So we are starting in mines, then we progress to dwarf tunnels, then mercenary barracks, and then we progress to something that is not available yet, which are these two final areas. So far, I managed to get twice through the mines, and I did one fight in the dwarf tunnels. I've never seen mercenary barracks, and well, with one fight in dwarf tunnels, I could even say that I basically never. I have seen nothing from the tunnels. So there is a lot for me to still explore in the game. Okay. Let's jump to the first fight. The first encounter is always a fight, and then we have 3 parts to choose from. So maybe I'll just check where to go in between episodes. Let's do that one fight that I promised. So just click where we want to go, progress there, it's a fight. So it will load up, and we are in Darkest Dungeon for minions on our side, 4 mobs on the other side. Here are their hit points. Under that, it's their sanity. You can read the name and their stats, so you have access to all the information that you need for planning. If it's more effective to focus on hit points, if it's more effective to focus on sanity, how dangerous they are. You just don't see their abilities. That's one thing that you have to like figure out as you play, how dangerous their abilities are. And at this point, I should say it's early access, so there are definitely bugs. I encountered some of them, not too many, but there are some. So for example, at one point, our fallen hero, or how he's called, but in average, our minions have, let's say, around 90 hit points. And in one fight, very early in the game, because I think it was a bug, I got hit for 1800 hit points. So I guess from time to time, things like that happen. But as I said, it's not too often, it's early access, so we'll just have to accept that sometimes shit happens. Okay, now, here are the skills. So our Lost Soul is fastest, so it goes first, and the same as in Darkest Dungeons, it's the position on which you are standing is important. You can't use each skill on each position. You can see it in the description on the skulls. So for example, the Misleading Beauty can be only used when you are on the first position, can be used against every single position on the enemy side. And the secondary effect, as you can see, that the yellow number 2 and red number 2 means that it moves the Lost Soul back 2 positions, and it moves the target back 2 positions as well. And then you have description. It's a magic attack that deals 125% of this number, which is 25 to 30 in this case damage, and the target deals 15% more damage until the end of the battle. So we do quite a lot of damage, but it leaves a buff on the enemy basically. And this is something specific for the Lost Soul. It has quite potent abilities that always have a drawback. You do damage, but you leave a buff behind, or it's a buff for you that you have to pay for later in certain way. For example, when we check the Benevolent Spirit, it heals the target, but 1 turn later it does the same amount of damage. So you have to plan carefully how you use how do you use the Lost Soul. Let's go through all the abilities. This will be the 4 minions they'll be using for most fights, at least for now. So let's check their abilities. We are starting with the Lost Soul. So we have Inspire Heroics, which is a stress attack. That's what we care about the most. So it can be used from the 3rd and 4th position against first 3 positions on the enemy side, and it moves the target 2 positions forward. It's a stress attack that deals damage that we can see to a target and the enemy standing behind the target, and it leaves behind a buff giving +10 accuracy. Next skill that we have, Benevolent Spirit, support skill that restores certain amount of hit points, and 1 turn later, it deals basically the same amount of magic damage, the attack doesn't spend the action, which means when you do the damage 1 turn later, you can still do something else after that. Then we have Misleading Beauty. We already checked this one, so it can be used only from the first position, deals certain amount of magic damage, leaves behind the buff. Then we have Steam of Delusion. Can be used from second, third position. Hits all enemies. As you can see, those helmets are linked with the line, so it means that hits all the positions that are linked. It's a stress attack, doesn't do that much damage, but it's because it hits everyone, and target gains extra initiative until the battle. So as usual for Lost Soul, it leaves a buff behind. Then we have Dubious Boon, which is a buff, and that gives the target 2 extra wards, but it debuffs the target, it deals less damage. But this is pretty important because wards, that's like a shielding against magical attacks, and this is the important combination why the Lost Soul can be used as a healer. The target that you want to heal, you use Dubious Boon on it, and then the ward mitigates the second part of the Benevolent Spirit, so it mitigates the magic damage. And then you have the last, this is the ultimate ability, and it's Sudden Reality, which is a buff that removes all buffs and debuffs from enemies, and the Lost Soul's allies, so the whole party, gains +1 damage until the battle ends for each buff or debuff removed this way. So this is a pretty potent buff, and it works well with all the Shade's abilities, because with every attack we leave behind the buff that we then remove with the Sudden Reality and buff all our minions. So this is how the Lost Soul works. We're gonna start by probably using the Dubious Boon on the Banshee. I like buffing everyone up, prepare them for the healing. It reduces their damage. As you can see, we're gonna need it. It reduces their damage, but specifically for the Banshee, it's not a big deal. We'll be using the Banshee more or less only for debuffing the enemy. Okay, now the Banshee, another minion that we want to check. So, Scream. At this point, I don't think I have to go through the skulls and the helmets where the attack can be used from and which position it can target. Scream is a stress attack that deals the damage that we can see and move the target to random position, so just shuffles everything around a little bit. Then we have No, which is a stance. Stances, that's a little bit different from buffs. You have to activate stances every turn, like refresh it, and when it's active, it has certain effect. In this case, whenever an enemy moves, the Banshee deals certain amount of damage. That's usually how stances work. It's that you activate it, and then when the enemy does something, usually it is when it moves, it triggers a certain effect. So you can just activate some stances, then force them to move. It sometimes works quite well, but you need to have like a specific party composition for that. I haven't experimented with much. It's pretty annoying when the enemy is using it effectively. Sometimes the compositions work amazingly well, that for example 2 of them use stances and the remaining ones then shuffle your group around and you are taking a ton of damage. So, well, it's another type of like ability that's in the game. It's not just attacks, buffs and debuffs. We have stances on top of that. Then we have Absorb Fear, restores the target to full sanity. So we want to deal sanity damage as much as possible. This is something that works against that, but this gives us the bonus of restoring mana to Iratus. Here, this is the amount of mana that Iratus has available, and this is what we are using to cast his spells. These spells would be here, but we don't have any available yet, so for now it doesn't matter. Then we have Whale, which is above all minions, gains +6 dread for their next action. So until the end of turn, all our minions are doing extra stress damage. Then we have Soprano, which is the important attack that we'll be using most often. It's an AoE stress attack that hits everything for, again, certain amount of damage, and it reduces their attack, so they're doing less physical damage. This doesn't stack, so if you have 2 Banshees, using 2 Soprano wouldn't do anything. But this is a pretty good buff. They actually nerfed it, I think, if I remember correctly, before the latest patch. The damage was like 6 to 7, maybe even 7 to 8, so it's pretty significant nerf. But, well, you are using this base, like, mostly for the debuff, so it's actually not a big deal. Okay, that's what we're gonna use. We can miss, as you can see. It depends on our accuracy. We don't have 100%, so it can happen. I think it said armor absorbed it. That means that's because the Dark Knight has 6 physical armor, and the attack would do less than 6 damage, so it was completely mitigated by the armor. Now, next is our Dark Knight. So this is our tank that has Heartless Slash. It's a physical attack that deals a certain amount of damage and then more damage based on how much armor the knight has. Don't really care about this one because we are not interested in doing physical damage most of the time. And I think it was also nerfed compared to the previous version. Then we have Hollow Stare. That's a stress attack, so that's what we care about. Deals, again, certain amount of damage and deals additional damage for each buff or debuff on the target. So this is, again, when the buffs and debuffs from the Lost Soul comes into play. We are buffing them, but we will be using their buffs against them thanks to the Hollow Stare. We'll be doing more damage to them. Then we have Dark Tide, which is a support, removes all debuffs from the Dark Knight, and restores mana to Iratus. Again, later we'll be using spells quite often, so it's important that we can restore mana, because the mana doesn't get fully restored in between fights. So we want to make sure that during fights we keep the mana on like reasonably high level. Then we have Futile Hopes, which is a stance. Each time an enemy receives a buff, the Dark Knight deals certain amount of stress damage to it. Then we have Unfeeling Aggression, physical attack, which is important because it can be used from these 2 positions, and it's basically a way of the Dark Knight how to move to the front when something pushes him back. It's important that the knight is in front, so this is our way how to get forward. Deals physical damage to the chosen target and enemy standing behind it, and when it crits, it deals more damage. And the ultimate is Abyssal Hunger. As you can see, AoE attack. Actually, I'm not sure if I covered the ultimate of the Banshee. Abyssal Hunger, AoE attack that doesn't deal damage in this case. It says that, excuse me, that's my cat here. It says that all enemies lose vigor. This can't be mitigated. When you deal damage, it can be like either blocked or reduced by armor, but when they lose vigor, it always hits for 12. And the Dark Knight recovers vigor in the amount of damage received by enemies. So this is why Dark Knight is so effective tank, because when he's taking damage, he can just leech it back with his ultimate ability. Healing is quite rare in this game, at least from what I've seen so far. I still have to like reveal 5 or 6 different minions, but with the minions that I have available, healing is pretty rare, so we'll be using Abyssal Hunger quite often, same as the healing from the Lost Soul. So that's the Dark Knight. I think we can just attack and use the attack here. This guy has a debuff, so we'll do more damage to him. Okay, they just debuffed our mummy. And that's the last minion we haven't covered yet. So, Cursing Touch, which is a curse, so basically like a dot. You do certain amount of damage, and for the next 2 turns, the damage is still ticking, so 8 to 10 and then 8 to 10 for 2 more turns. This is probably the base attack they'll be using the most. Then we have Clinging Wraps, which is a physical attack, so not that interesting. That's quite a lot of damage, and the target loses 10 luck for 2 turns. Sometimes we'll be using this when the zombie is moved a few positions back and we want to debuff the target, just decrease the chance that we receive a crit. Some mobs don't really hit that hard unless they're crit. They have like a crit multiplier bonuses. So removing 10 luck from them is actually a lot. So sometimes this can be like a pretty important debuff. Then we have Impending Horror, which is a stress attack, deals again certain amount of damage to the chosen target and enemy standing behind it. Then we have Absorb Curses, remove all debuffs from allies, so pretty damn good support spell. And the mummy gains +5 vigor for each debuff removed, so a little bit of healing. And then we have Hex Beam, stress attack, does damage, and additional 11 to 14 damage if the mummy has a debuff. So we don't always want to remove debuffs from the mummy specifically, just to make sure the Hex Beam deals extra damage. The ultimate is Amplify Curses, stress attack that deals a ton of damage, and additionally deals 1 stress damage for each point of negative luck that the target has. So if you like use the Clinging Wraps multiple times and reduce the luck a lot, then it works together with the Amplify Curses. The problem is this is physical damage and this is stress attack. You usually want to focus on only one, so not the the optimal synergy that you want to see. Okay, so we have that covered. I think the only thing I forgot about is the ultimate of the Banshee, but we'll get to that. What we want to use early in the fight, we probably want to go for the Cursing Touch. Let's use it, let's say on this guy. Here's the debuff, so we'll be doing damage for remaining or 2 more turns. That's what I'm trying to say. Then I don't think we have to heal yet. Maybe we just do damage if we give them extra accuracy. It should be fine. And okay, so here is the buff that we gave them. This was a block that... Oh, and the crit, okay. That's unfortunate. So, the block, that's because zombie starts with 1 stack of block. So we already used that up. And crit, the enemies can crit, of course. So we got unlucky. The Dark Knight got hit by the crit. What I'm trying to still figure out here is how the energy for the ultimate ability works. I'm pretty sure it's not rage. It's rising here. We are currently at 40. It goes to 100, then it stops. So just watch this bar around the mana as it's filling up, and it's the energy that we need to activate the ultimate abilities. Right now we can activate Amplify Curses that would remove the buff that we gave them recently. I don't think that's really worth it. We probably just want to... Or actually, wait, this is the zombie. Never mind. I thought that was the ultimate of the Lost Soul. So we can do quite a lot of stress damage. But I think I want to save 60 and then heal the Knight. I want the group to be as healthy as possible after every fight, because you don't fully heal in between fights. I'll just debuff another one. Oh, I can't reach this one. Okay, fine. I'll just debuff this one. And one more thing that I forgot. We did enough stress damage so that he went insane. Insanity has quite a few different effects that, from what I've so far noticed, are just like rolled randomly. In this case, we got pretty unlucky because he went berserk, which means damage dealt is increased by 25%, but he receives more damage, and it works for both types of damage. So hopefully he will get heart attack faster, but this is not like the ideal result of insanity that you want to see. Most of the insanity debuffs are like purely negative. The berserk is probably the best option he could have gotten. Okay, now just want to keep debuffing them. Make sure that this debuff is active basically all the time. There we go, another guy went insane. Let's check the result of the insanity. All remaining strength. So at the start of each turn, loses 40% of its maximum vigor, but receives an extra action. So he will be slowly dying, or pretty quickly actually, 40% is a lot. So he'll be dying in the next 3 turns, but for those 3 turns he can like attack or act twice per turn. This is also quite a dangerous result. These are probably the 2 most dangerous results I've seen so far. There are results that are clearly negative, that just reduce all their stats, basically, all the kind of stuff. So in this case, not ideal outcome of insanity. Okay, we don't have enough, let's call it rage yet. The turn ends here, so the lost soul will still go. We can wait, actually. Or wait, can we move 1 position forward? No. I'll just wait. Oh, it's actually no. Here, this is where the turn ends. It's here. This is where the 3rd turn begins. Never mind. So I have to do something. I thought I would wait, maybe. With the other attacks, I would get enough rage and then activate the Abyssal Hunger as the last thing this turn. But the Dark Knight goes last this turn, so it's not gonna work. Okay, let's just hit this guy or not. We had the debuff, I think. So never mind. Keep. The only one who needed the debuff actually didn't get hit. I think now I still didn't take that much damage. Okay, well, let's no. I wanted to say let's use the sudden reality, but I want to save the rage for the fallen hero. You know what? I'll just use the heal. If I could make it so that everyone is at 100% health at the end of this fight, let's do it. So that's the heal. Next turn we'll receive the magic damage that will be mitigated by the ward. Can we move the zombie 1 tile back? We can. But then I wouldn't attack. I still think I want to do it. We don't have any like debuffs. I'm just doing this to shuffle everyone around. And he still got a hit. Yeah, that's the 2nd attack. Oh, come on. That's the curse ticking. And now we can use the Abyssal Hunger. Oh, and we got stunned. Great. Stuns actually are relatively common. Yeah, let's soak the life from them. And here the ward mitigated the magic damage. Okay, let's keep healing, I guess. This is basically all I do with the Lost Soul. I just use it as a full-time healer and just make sure I have the wards up all the time and I can keep healing. Debuffing someone who's stunned, probably not the most effective approach. Okay, here we won't see that heart attack because he'll just die from the insanity before he can get heart attack. Let's attack here. Oh, by the way, they don't get heart attack when they reach 0 sanity. It takes a while after that. So you have to just keep hitting them. I can heal the mummy. It has one ward naturally. Can we move back just one position? Oh, here's the ultimate of the Banshee. I think I still forgot. Howl, which is a magic attack, so it affects hit points. Deals basically no damage, but targets skip their next turn. So it's a stun against the first two positions. So actually pretty powerful. But we don't really need that. I actually don't use that too often.
Your cries are music to me.
Okay, stress attacks. Let's take this guy lower so that he goes insane as well. What was the result? Panic. There we go. That should be. And this guy got a heart attack already. So panic. Receives extra initiative, receives evasion. So again, there is a positive effect of this result, but loses 50 accuracy, which is a lot, and 33% chance to skip an action. So you can see that the negatives are pretty serious in this case. Okay, the mummy. Can we move forward? No. Actually, we can. We can move to the impending horror. Let's do that. He wants to escape. I'm not sure if you'll be able to kill him. Let's just attack. Do as much stress damage as possible this turn. Hopefully he gets heart attack before he can run. Oh, this is not gonna work. What's the strongest attack? This one. Come on, there we go. Now he got heart attack. So, there's our victory. We did take some damage. I didn't heal in the end, but it's not that bad. As a reward, 100 experience for Iratus. Architect Soul, so it's for the buildings. Then these are basic crafting. Actually, all of these are basic crafting materials. This is an artifact for Iratus, so you got quite lucky with that. And then brain. This is just one brain of level 2. And this means we can give the brain to a minion that is on level 1 to give it 1 level. You can get higher level brains, and this number always tells you to which level it's gonna like improve your minion. So if you get, I don't know, brain with the number 4 here, and you give the brain to level 1 minion, it immediately improves the minion to all the way to level 4. Okay, and from the graveyard, because we are working the graveyard, we got actually an uncommon weapon. That's a pretty nice result. So when we check here, we didn't get enough experience for a level up. We need one more fight to get the level up for our minions. The damage that we suffer is not too bad. We can use the minions for the next fight. We can check the item that we found. Nobleman's Garb. Iratus gains 20% more parts after a battle if 4 minions were at level 3 or better. So again, later when our minions get some level ups, this is gonna be a pretty damn good item. We might as well equip it. We don't have anything else, but I won't do anything for now. But 20% is a lot later. And yeah, I think that's it. We have all the basics covered. We know how the composition works. This specific composition, of course, as you can see, we have quite a few other minions to cover, but those work with like a different approach. For example, if you wanted to go after the enemy hit points, we would be using something like 2 Dark Knights, Bride of Iratus, and something. Then there are like multiple options. I still like using, for example, Banshee for the debuffs, but then we play with completely different abilities. And I think that's it for this episode. Next time there definitely won't be as much talking. We'll focus on the gameplay a lot more. As I said, I will check the paths in between episodes, choose probably the longest one, because I want to fight as much as possible before we get to the boss. And yeah, I think that's it. So I hope that you like this game. I hope that you like this episode and that you're gonna join me for the next episode again. And until then, have a good time. Bye bye.